Welcome to another enriching episode of the Men After God podcast, the resource for those passionate about leading and growing impactful men's ministries. Today, we'll dive into strategies, share insights, and discuss tools to help you inspire and guide the men in your church and community. Let's embark on this journey together to build stronger ministries and foster authentic brotherhood among men.
Hey guys, welcome back to another week of the Men After God podcast. Another episode, not just another week. We do multiple episodes a week now, and I'm still getting used to it. I've been good. I've been so good. All right, guys, today we are going to talk about meeting resistance in ministry or men's ministry. I'm sure you as a leader have tried to change something, do something a little differently, and you've met resistance. We all have, because one of there's this cycle. Luke, maybe you know it. There's the cycle of change, right? Or how people receive it, right? So the moment you walk up to someone and say, hey, I have a brand new idea you've never heard of, like the first thoughts in a person's mind is resistance or is denial or something like that. And then they go through these phases until they're like, oh, this is a wonderful idea. I'm so glad I had it. And I can't remember what the name of that is. I'm going to look it up. But you're going to meet a lot of resistance in ministry in general as you try to do things and you try to help people see how their mindset, their approach to life even needs to have some adjustments in it, because all of us are making adjustments based upon the conviction of the Holy Spirit and how we're following Jesus and where we're at in our walk with him. And so when it comes to meeting resistance, we need to know how to navigate that. How do we approach that? And one of the greatest things is understanding it, because I know, coming from a military background, I don't understand resistance as well as some. I like to speak and people listen and then it's over, right? It's done. But I have a teenager now, and well, that's just not how my life is anymore. But as a sergeant in the Marine Corps, it was very much, I speak, you do, game over. And if you don't, I get to say mean things, and you still do it, and it is what it is. But there's something at the foundation of leadership, of relationships, and that's trust. And Patrick Leone said, trust is the foundation of real teamwork. You've got to build trust. And even with trust, you're still going to have some resistance and stuff. But where does resistance come from? Luke's going to walk us through how we can best understand what that root of resistance is, because Luke understands people in a way that I probably never will. So Luke, take it away, man.
Well, I'll say this. It's human nature. What we know of humans is it's human nature to avoid things that are uncomfortable. Again, you have the whole fight, flight, or fear concept of when people are triggered with change, they're going to typically come up with one of those things where they're, and so you need to know where you're at, meaning, and some people are like, well, fight is obviously better because it's more aggressive and we're on the offense, not the defense. I want to discover something. Human nature doesn't care what you believe. Human nature is who you are. So if you have a tendency to avoid things, avoid conflict, you just want to avoid it, there's your flight, right? I want to ignore it. There's my freeze. And then there's a tendency to go direct for the jugular, and that's your fight, right? So understanding who you're dealing with is crucial. Human nature wants to be comfortable. And when you try to make a change or you bring up an idea, and I'm gonna trigger some of you in a second here on purpose. You're talking to membership, you have an idea, you're presenting a vision, and there's always one. Sometimes there's more than one. And they'll either vocally in front of people, they'll do it differently, they'll come to you around, they'll let you know there's going to be consequences. They don't like, they're just very vocal about the change and the fact that you're wrong, irrelevant of what God's called you to do. Now, I want to step back. If it's God's calling and God has impressed upon your heart to do something, then you do it. I will say this, God can impress upon your heart to do something, and there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. The motives might be good, but the motions need to align with what God wants you to do. So take a step back. How many of you have had someone in your ministry, and by the way, some of you report to a senior pastor and stuff like that, and you'll take an idea to your senior pastor and you'll get immediate resistance, immediate like shutdown, and you're like, oh, just like disheartening, right? Sometimes we do the same thing. So on the flip side of, while we're dealing with people that are skeptics and that are vision, they dump a bucket of water on your fire pretty fast, you also are in a position where people are coming to you saying, hey, we think that there's a better way to do it, right? And they're visionary people too. And what do? The human nature, human instinct wants to say no. You want to say no because it's changed, right? I'm going to give you a tip here. I learned this the other day. while you're presenting your vision to different individuals, and I believe there's a whole process for working with people, but when you're working with people, especially the skeptic and the different people you're trying to ultimately win over or just kind of get them to be like, hey, come along with us, this is where we're going. One of the ways you can ask it, instead of saying, hey, do you think this is a good idea? Because what are they going to say? Human tendency wants to say no, right? Don't give them a chance to say no. Only give them a chance to say no, but have them give it their no means a yes. So do you see any problem with this as we go forward? And it gives them a chance to say no, but be in agreement with you. Do you see any issues with this? Do you have any? Now, they might see some things. They might have some, like, hey, what have you thought about? And this is what you're doing is you've now changed them to an advisor versus an adversary, just by the opportunity of having a conversation where you're allowing for them to say no, but their no actually means yes. Do you see any issues with us having the breakfast at 9 a.m. instead of 8 a.m., right? Well, no. Okay, great. They got to say no and you got your yes. Now, that's simple. It doesn't always work. Just want to throw that out there. But understand this. People are naturally going to be contrary because it wasn't their idea. So until you make it their idea, so if you're constantly having to cast your vision or you're being a dictator and you're like, well, this is what we're doing and it's my way or the main street and the other church down the road, then you missed it, because that's not leadership. Leadership is influence. I'm going to influence. Now, I'm not going to win everybody, and I'm not going to try to please everybody either, because that's a great way to fail. But I am going to do my best to make sure I'm individually and uniquely dealing with the people that I know are going to be skeptics. I recently was at a church well, it doesn't matter. And we were going through the Working Geniuses, and there was an individual in the room, and we had 18 people in the room, and we had a lot of encouragers, a lot of enablers, a lot of real positive people, right? And then we had and I love this profile. So if you know Working Geniuses, and if you don't, we need to talk. The DT, the tenacious discerner, right? The judicious accomplisher. Now, I have those people on my team I work with here. I love them. They are some of the most effective people that I work with. And I mean that very, very seriously. I have my person who's in my right hand is this person. They hold me very accountable. But they don't waste any words. They just say it like it is. And a lot of times that discernment, which asks really pointed questions, and the tenacious, which sees the end result, is a bucket of ice water on a fire, right? And what you have to do with that individual is literally allow them to discern. Some people are discerners, and this is our conversation we had with this church, was allowing this person to, they're going to say it really abruptly because that's what's on their mind and that's how they're going to do it. And that's fine. So be mindful of this. If we allow them to be almost disagreeable in a, hey, what are we missing? What do you see that could be better? I'm going to use that gift that they have and bring them to the table. And they're going to rub people the wrong way. They just do that. That's fine. But when you know where they're at and they know where you're at, they become a very, very loyal person who tends to promote your cause for you because they've been able to ask the questions. And a lot of times we perceive questions as conflict when really it's just clarity. And I really want to lean into that as you go. There's so many people things we could talk about, but when you're dealing with people, if there's pride in my Bible, in Proverbs, I've got it right here in Proverbs 13:10, right? There's a place in the bottom. It says the verse says this: "Only by pride cometh contention, but with the well advised is wisdom." Right? It's a great Bible verse. Right below that verse, I have a little arrow that points down. It says, "If there's a problem, it's probably me." Now, it doesn't mean that's always the case, but I will say this: where there's contention, there's pride, and where there's pride, there's a person. Now, most of the time, it's two people. It's you and them. So what do we have to do to say, okay, it's not about us, it's about Jesus. And understand this: Jesus' approach was always humble. He had every right to be everything arrogant, but Jesus was always humble. Now, he was confident, but he was humble. And so in the approach to people, understand you're going to cause more conflict if you're not just mindful of the fact that different people perceive what you're doing as a threat. Fight, flight, fear. Be aware of it so that you can put them at peace. Help them find some peace in it. Now, is everybody going to find it? Nope. Do you need to make decisions and do what you got to do? Yep. Is there a better way to approach it? I don't know. That you need to talk to God and ask that question, like, hey, is there a way that I could approach this better? Because sometimes we just say, well, this is what we're doing, and if you don't like it, then like it or lump it. I'm sorry, you're not their dad. You're a leader. Influence it.
And that influence.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I want to, normally we'd move on, but I know Dustin has some thoughts here. So Dustin, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I want to jump into that because I think you mentioned it. We see questions as conflict when really it's clarity. Oftentimes people are skeptical because they have an idea of what you're saying versus what you're actually saying. Let me give you an example. When I was pastoring a church, we had pews that had been there since I think dawn of time was the date on them. And so, but nonetheless, half a dozen or more of them had, half a dozen more of them had been broken, had been repaired and things. They were faded. They needed to be replaced. And we were, leading through that. I'd had conversations with individuals. We brought it before the church, and I still had people coming up to me. And I had one guy who was kind of pushing back, and I had to talk to him like, "Hey, what's your concern with these chairs? What is this? I'm not getting it." And he looks at me and goes, "I don't want these white plastic chairs all over the auditorium." Wait a minute. What do you think we're buying? And he had in his mind these white plastic Members Mark Sam's Club chairs all across the auditorium. Now, granted, listen, guys, this isn't a church plant. This is an established church, been there for many years. Like church plants, you do what you got to do. But this is so he didn't want to go from having pews to this cheap looking thing. I said, me either. That's why we're getting these. And I pull up my phone. I'm like, here, do you see this? And like, that's why we're paying so much for them too. And he said, oh, those look nice. Yeah. Guys, when you're trying to get men involved with men's ministry, you're trying to accomplish anything, you have to understand that there is a preconceived notion people have in their heads about what you said. And even though you said it, doesn't mean they heard what you said. They heard what they wanted to hear, or they heard something completely different than what you said. And you got to figure out what that is. Some guys hear men's ministry and they think, wow, I don't want to sit around and just have some guy lecture me for 30 minutes. I don't want to give up 2 hours of my Saturday for breakfast and a serving opportunity. I don't want to sit around and sing Kumbaya and share my feelings with everyone. So we have to reframe their understanding of what it is that we're actually trying to accomplish. Making sure we're not having forced vulnerability, but authentic fellowship and relationships. Let them know that we're not looking to, figuring out whatever it is that they have in their head, and making sure that they have real clarity on what that actual thing that you're trying to push or maneuver or change is versus what they think it is. Which rolls us right into the next thing that we want to bring up in this when it comes to leading change. It means having effective communication and clarity. Now, I'm going to take this one for the majority of it, but I got to toss it back to Luke for this because he came up with this amazing quote that I think we need plastered all over ministry websites and Bible colleges, and we should probably write a blog on it. But Luke, I'm going to let you drop this one on the world because it is so true.
Good content without connection, it will bring compliance, but it doesn't inspire commitment. And the concept there being, if you've ever been in a role where somebody's up there dropping a lot of good stuff, a good value, good vision, good plans, good whatever, but you don't trust them or you don't know them and you don't know their heart, a lot of times it's lost because it's good stuff, but I'm not inspired to commit to it. And I'd say this a lot of times, and I know Dustin's going to cover this, is going to jump into when I trust someone, when I trust their heart, a lot of what they do doesn't get questioned. I step in line because I know them. I know they love Jesus. And so I've been a part of several incredible churches. I've personally never served under someone I consider to be a bad pastor. I've had all of my previous pastors I'm still very good friends with. And I would call them right now and have a great conversation. But there's been times where I felt disconnected. I'm like, where are we going with this? Like, is this God or is this person? Is this the network pastor networking or is this someone who's following his lead, right? And so
love that throwback.
Yeah, right. But I will say this: when you know your pastor and know your leader, it makes it so easy to just fall in line. And by the way, the reason I'm saying this is because when you're connected with your people and you're touching base and you're looping them in and you're allowing them to be a part of it, the commitment level is huge. I'm going to go back to that church in California I was just at, the church that doesn't matter where it's at, that church. We finished almost an 8-hour workshop. It was like a 7-hour workshop, 18 people. They've just bought a new building. Immediately after we finished this workshop, we had a great time. immediately we went over to see the new building. So I've got the pastor, we're going over there. I go to the church and there's 20 or 30 people at the church. They're painting and they're working stuff and they're fixing things. And here comes the 18 people that were just in that 7-hour workshop where I am boring them to death. They are half asleep, right? They come over and they immediately get involved and they're cleaning and they're painting and they're scraping and they're putting this new building in order. And it wasn't a new building, it was a very old building. But the concept was they're so well connected to their pastor's vision, their pastor's why. They're so involved and engaged that all of they just spent $2 million in building, or what, I don't know what they spent, but the concept is there's a commitment level there, but there's a connection. Before you ask for their hand, you got to connect with their heart. And a lot of times that's going to be based on not just, hey, we're doing this or this is what I want to do, but here's what I want to do and here's why I want to do it. So that's a lot longer than Dustin wanted to pass it back for me, but that's just that why aspect of it.
Yeah, man. No, that is great. I love it. And that's exactly what I want to talk about is that why aspect. I'm sure you've been in a message before where the pastor has had phenomenal content because it should be from the Bible. Bible's phenomenal content, period. Right? He has great content and he's delivering it. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, why is this not connecting? Why is this not hitting? Why am I not? What's going on here? Now, first I want to say, you got to check your own heart, right? We're not blaming pastors. We're talking about your heart there. Okay. However, there's an aspect as a leader of we have to consider how we're communicating and what we're communicating.
Yeah.
One of the things we teach in our getting ready to be newly released sermon development delivery based on the 16 undeniable laws of communication with John Maxwell is about connection. There's 5 levels of connection and communication. The first one is people listen to you because they have to. Can I tell you something? In ministry, no one has to listen to you except for the people you're paying, right? You're probably not paying everyone at your church to be there. If you are, I'm trying to figure out how you have any sort of budget whatsoever.
Why is Joel Osteen listening to this podcast? I don't understand.
Yeah, right. And by the way, Joel, if you'd like to give to a good cause, Men After God, www.menaftergod.net.
I will
shoot me
to
an
your
email.
messages.
That's it. Yeah, you toss us $20 million and we'll have a conversation. I'll just take the money that was hidden in your bathroom. All right. Anyways, so how'd we get there? You've got they have to listen to you because you pay them to, or because they have to. Well, no one in ministry has to listen. No one in your church has to listen to you. They don't have to. And then the other 4, I don't remember exactly, but I'm afraid too many of us operate with that because many people that are leaders in ministry are leaders in their jobs. They're leaders in their corporate aspect of the business world, and they live in a space where everyone listens to them because they have to, but you can't walk in there with that. And especially if you're a pastor, full-time ministry leader, you understand that you earn the right to be able to speak to them, to be able to deliver to them. And you're earning that every single week and every single time you talk. A lot of people communicate with data and stats, and then they communicate with a lot of detail. That's going to get received differently by other different people. You're going to have someone who's going to hear all this detail about this change you want to bring. For instance, let's say it's a building project, or let's say it's a new way to do men's ministry because you want to have a Zoom meeting, or you want to have a men's basketball tournament, or whatever it might be. And you're going to have, okay, it's this. We've seen any of the churches that have done it. You've done the case studies. You come in with the percentages of increased giving, the percentages of increased happiness in the home, and all these different stuff and these stats. And people hear that, and that's all they hear, but they don't actually hear why. And even when you're trying to get people involved in ministry, you're saying things like, hey, once you come out to men's breakfast, it's a great time. I can have a great time playing video games on Saturday morning. I can have a great time sleeping in. A great time. That's not it. What's the purpose? Why should they be involved with this? Why should they want to be a part of what you're doing? You've got to tell people why you are doing something, or else they're just going to look at you like, oh, that's really cool. Go have fun and be merry, right? So what if you told people, hey, listen, we're having a men's breakfast this Saturday at 10 a.m., 9 a.m., 8 a.m., whatever your time is, because we're building community where men encourage each other through biblical principles to lead their families faithfully. Come on out and enjoy a devotion, a great meal, and we'll see you on Saturday. Well, now, hang on. You caught my attention there because hang on. You're doing what? You're encouraging men to build. I want to do that. You're using we treat men's breakfast as though it's the end. Men's breakfast is the means to get people together, to engage them and encourage them to grow in the relationship with Christ. Now, you can formulate that, you can say that however you want, but remember, you're not speaking clearly unless you're telling someone why you're doing what you want to do, which is why we teach in our coaching program for the mission and vision statements. They should always have "so that" statements. For instance, Men After God produces content, community coaching, and conferences to develop men who develop men, so that wives and children know what it means to be led by a man after God in this generation and the next. That's why we do what we do. I don't do what we do because I love creating content. I do love creating content, but that's not why I do this. I create content about anything. I don't do what I do because I just love speaking. I do love speaking. I tell you, I really don't do it because I have to, if I've got data or I have to be very detail oriented in some things, and Luke knows this about me. I don't do it because of that, but I do those things because I want to have an organization that impacts men who impact men, so that wives and children know what it means to be led by a man after God in this generation and the next. So what is the reason you want to bring about change? What's the reason you want to do something different? Stop telling people what you want to do and start telling people why you want to do it, and start asking them to be a part of the why, not the what. And you will see much more engagement and involvement and receptivity, if that's even a word, to what you're bringing to the table. So don't shy away from drawing connections of the what to the why, and especially when you bring it back to biblical truth and principles.
Yeah.
That's why we do what we do, because ultimately men need a closer relationship with Jesus, and they do that through understanding who he is and what he's done in his word. We are just trying to find different ways to package it to meet people where they are so that they receive it. The same is true with whatever change you're trying to bring. You're going to meet resistance. You can ease the resistance when you talk about the why more than the what, and bring people into that conversation.
It's gold. It's gold. Yeah. As you're dealing with your people, and again, just in general, if you're consistent with your why and your behavior, your communication as a ministry leader, as a pastor, my pastor gets up, and I think it's probably once a month or twice a month, we hear that our vision as a church is to be, advance the kingdom, but be a multicultural, multi-economical, multi-language. Like he's the multi-pastor. That's what the staff calls my pastor, a multi-pastor, because he wants to be all inclusive. We're starting our third language in a few months. There's just an impact. We run 17 buses on every Sunday for a reason, and our church is just very diverse, and we love it. We love it, right? But that's the passion, is the why. So when pastor says, "Hey, I want to partner with a nonprofit to do a Toys for Tots, DFW Cares for Kids thing. I want to do." Guess what? There's a lot of people like, "Okay, I'm going to be there Saturday morning to help with that." Like I want to be, because he's like, we're going to impact our community where we're going to share the gospel in a big way. Well, his heart and his why has already been conveyed to us. And by the way, if somebody has a problem with that, they don't belong. They very quickly move out. And by the way, we wish them the best. They're going to go fit in some church. There's another church that needs them as a member for multiple reasons. And a lot of the same reasons are because of the same reason we don't need them as a member here. And I say that in love, but I also want to say this: as you're dealing with people, understand conflict, resistance, questions. Those are opportunities for trust to be built. If you provide a place for people to ask questions, do you know what they're going to do? They're going to ask questions. And for you as a leader, a lot of times you take that as personal. They're questioning you. No, they're not. They just have good questions, and they may not know how to articulate the question in a way where it comes across correctly, but you need to not be so easily offended and get over yourself and realize that they are a part of the ministry. You're not the ministry. So in the process of clarity and all that, man, you're going to have resistance. Most of you probably already have had. You've put names to these different people we're mentioning. It's okay. These are going to be some of your biggest cheerleaders once they feel safe and once they feel like they trust your why, because you've cast that vision, and that is so clear that they're like, "Oh, we're doing that so that we can kingdom advancement, make it impact, reach men, reach families." It's pretty awesome.
I love it, man. I love it. And just close it out with Luke's fantastic quote again: "Good content without connection breeds compliance, without impact, without commitment." He said it differently. I didn't write it down right, but we'll make sure that's in the show notes, because I love that. We'll throw it on a t-shirt someday. But guys, look, resistance is going to be there, and resistance is not futile, which is a quote from some movie that I can't remember right now. I just know it's a quote. Resistance is probably a good thing, because if people care enough to ask a question, that means they care. If they're not asking questions and just leaving, they didn't care. They care. That's why they're asking. And I wish they always ask them nicely. They don't. So be ready. Okay. Connect with us over at facebook.com/group/Men After God podcast. Or I'm sorry, facebook.com/group/Men After God, or follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/the Men After God. And don't forget, give us a like, subscribe, review, share, tell someone about it, because I know there's a ministry leader, who's working through change right now, and this could be a help to him. All right, guys, have a great day. We'll talk to you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Men After God podcast. We hope today's discussion has encouraged and equipped you on your journey. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, comments, or would like to partner with us, please reach out at support@menaftergod.net. Stay connected with our community by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/menaftergodpodcast. For deeper engagement, join our group at facebook.com/groups/menaftergod and connect with other men pursuing God's heart. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps us reach more men striving to live faithfully. Until next time, stay strong in the faith and continue pursuing after God.